At a family dinner, my mother smiled, my father made a toast, my sister scrolled her phone, and my daughter passed me a note beneath the table. It said to call 911. She appeared pallid. I did not panic. I did it. 17 minutes later, my folks were in a frenzy. Yes, that is how my Thursday night went. I drove 2 hours to get there thinking I was being a good mother and daughter. The whole event was intended to be a calm evening at the family's country getaway, which is a nice term for a mold-scented, low-ceilinged house with suspiciously thin walls and squeaky floors. You know the type. Your niece recalls the bathroom tile better than your heart does the sunsets. Anyway, my parents had invited Lily, my daughter, to stay for a few weeks following graduation. They stated she looked pale, that she needed to relax, and that they miss her. And moron that I am, I believe them. Lily had kept silent since Arthur, my uncle, and her great-uncle died. He had been like a grandfather to her. There's no wife or children, just an old man with a soft heart and a calm house filled with wooden trains. When he died, it devastated her. She wasn't answering calls too often, but when I did, she always sounded exhausted, not terrified. I could deal with being tired. Tired, I could fix. So I asked if I might come visit for one evening. They weren't thrilled, but they agreed. I am going to say something stupid now. I didn't notice anything unusual when I arrived. I walked inside. They smiled. My mother hugged me. My father made a joke about the wine I brought being truly palatable this time. Everyone laughed. My sister waved from the kitchen. They had even put lanterns on the porch as if we were staying at a well-reviewed Airbnb. And Lily was there smiling, sort of. She seemed thinner and paler than usual. Her eyes were puffy and glazed over from sobbing. She grinned when she saw me. She stood up and hugged me briefly, which made me suspicious. The kind of hug that says, "Thank God you're here," but doesn't want to be too blatant about it. So I didn't say anything. I just squeezed her hand and asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded. Dinner began. Burgers, potato salad, and slices of tomato that appeared to have been cut with a spoon. Everyone spoke as if it were any other evening. My father told me a story of nearly crashing a golf cart. My mother continued refilling everyone's glasses with boxed wine, saying, "Just a splash," and pouring half a cup. My sister scrolled her phone beneath the table. The man seated across from me, a family acquaintance, grinned any time I looked at him. I smiled back because women are taught from birth to smile when men gaze at them. I couldn't remember his name. I did not recall ever being told his name. Then it occurred. Just as my father raised his glass and toast to Fresh Air family and how we should do this more often, I felt a hand brush my leg under the table. Lily. She sat near me. She slipped something in my lap, a folded piece of paper ripped from a notepad, the type my mother kept by the phone for grocery lists and passive-aggressive reminders to recycle. I looked down and unfolded it. "Call 911. There's no exclamation mark or explanation, just that." I froze. She was still looking forward, not at me, and staring into the center of the table as if nothing had happened. But I witnessed her hand shake. I noticed her leg jumping under the table. My throat became dry. My mother turned to me. "Is everything all right, honey?" I folded the paper back up without blinking and placed it under my leg. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just the potato salad is a little rich." They laughed. My father made a joke about my city stomach. I laughed, but I couldn't feel my hands anymore. What the hell was happening? I looked at Lily again. She didn't look back, but her jaw was clenched and her eyes glassy. Was she serious? Was she joking? No, she was not joking. And why couldn't she simply say it aloud? Because she was terrified. I needed to get out of there. I cleared my throat. "Mind if I use the restroom?" My mother gestured toward the hallway. "Of course, sweetie." I rose up and brought my suitcase with me just in case. Just in case what I didn't know yet. But something in my gut had become frigid. The hallway was narrow. The bathroom door stuck midway, just like it always did. I locked it behind me and sat on the closed toilet lid as if I were about to vomit. I took out my phone. My hand was shaking so much that it took 3 attempts to open the screen. I didn't call my husband or text a buddy. I dialed 911. The dispatcher picked up in less than 5 seconds. "What is your emergency service location? I provided the address." My voice cracked halfway through the street's name. I murmured, "I'm not sure what's going on." My daughter slipped me a note under the table. It said to call 911. She appeared afraid. "She is staying here with my parents. I'm only here to visit. I'm not sure what's wrong, but I believe she is in danger, please. The dispatcher posed a few questions. Name how many individuals were in the house. Was anybody hurt? I don't know, I said again. But I'm not sure where she has been. I believe she's been trying to tell me something. She looks like she has been crying for days. Something is not right. They claimed that someone was already on their way. I hung up, sat still, and attempted to breathe. Now I had a new problem. I had to go back out there and sit at that table with those who were either utterly innocent or something entirely else. But was I paranoid, or had my kid just given me the most dreadful message of her life, and now I have to wait? I don't recall opening the bathroom door, returning to the dinner table, or how I managed to seat without passing out. I remember having a glass of wine in my hand, though. I did not drink it. I merely clutched it like a prop because I was worried if I let go, my hands would reveal what was going on beneath the surface. My daughter had just handed me a note that read, "Call 911," and I had called them. They were on the way, but now I was stranded at this table with 4 people laughing and distributing salad as if it weren't a horror film in slow motion. One of those traditional family dinners that begins with a toast and concludes with someone bleeding on the tablecloth. I laughed at someone's joke. I've no idea what it was. I kept laughing, nodding and smiling because that's how women react when they're terrified. That's what daughters do when their parents stare at them and pretend nothing is wrong. That is what mothers do when their child is in danger and they do not know how or from whom. And in between the phony laughter and the buzzing in my ears, my brain did what it always does when I'm nervous. It moved backwards because this was not new. Not really. I've spent my entire life getting to that position. The one we're now sitting in. The one that smells of mildew, wood polish, and burnt coffee. I was 4 years old when my parents bought it. My sister was just out of diapers. I vividly remember the sunburn I suffered the first summer we were here, and how my mother scolded me for not properly applying the lotion as if I had failed at sunscreen. She said it kindly, though. She always spoke sweetly. They were not the type of parents to scream. This would have been too clear. They were colder than that, polite and distant, almost formal. If you asked, they would say they did everything correctly. We had food and clothes. They attended our school plays and clapped and smiled. My mother even packed our lunches, no crust color-coded containers or handwritten notes folded in half like little contracts. Be kind, make good decisions, and love your mother. What no one noticed was the silence behind the door when we returned home. The way affection emerged only when my sister entered the room. I kept attempting to earn something that didn't actually belong to me. My sister may simply exist. She could spill juice cry at cartoons and break stuff. They would laugh, call her ridiculous, and then fix it. At the age of 7, I made straight A's, offered to do dishes, and attempted to choreograph an entire dance performance in the living room simply to catch their attention. They looked, then asked me to stop because I was being too loud. And I get how it sounds. Petty and infantile, like a jealous story from a child who did not receive enough hugs. But here's the deal. When you grow up in a house like that, the lack of love does not manifest as violence. It appears as precision. They did everything perfectly except make me feel something real. I quit up trying at some point, possibly when I was 12 or 15. I recall lying on the balcony one night after a birthday celebration where they had forgotten the candles and thought, maybe you can't make people love you. Perhaps this is simply the type of parent they are. And once I accepted it, I stopped anticipating warmth. I stopped needing it, sort of. I was 20 when I got pregnant with Lily. That is a big narrative in itself. What matters here is this. When she was born, I promised myself that she would never feel the way I did, that she would never doubt if she was loved, and that she would never have to earn her position in my life. I kept my commitment. To their credit, my folks were initially only faintly intrigued. They bought stuffed animals for Lily as a newborn, wrote her cards on occasion, and inquired about her well-being. However, the process quickly repeated itself. That same polite disinterest, the affection that appeared only when it made them look good, the babysitting offers that turned into last-minute cancellations, and the "we've been so busy" texts that arrived after birthdays. I never told Lily not to love them and never stood in her way. I figured if they wanted to be with their grandchild, I would not hinder them. They weren't evil people, I reminded myself, just constrained and emotionally underdeveloped. But she noticed. Children always do. On weekends, we'd drive 2 hours here and she'd bring her backpack full of painting supplies, food, and the most recent book she wanted to show Grandma. They'd nod faintly and return to reading the newspaper. So I let it happen because they were not harming her. They weren't doing anything improper? Correct. But the one person who never let her down was Uncle Arthur, my mother's older brother. He never had children or married, lost the love of his life when he was just 30 years old and never recovered. He lived quietly, built a great business, retired early, traveled, gave to modest charities, and sent me books with scribbled notes in the margins. I once received a pair of gloves I had mentioned liking 2 years before, with the receipts still folded inside. When Lily was born, something inside him appeared to spark up. He clutched her as if she were something special. He arrived with picture books in Italian and a carved wooden owl from a place I had never heard of. He never missed a birthday or forgot a school play. He referred to her as his miracle girl, and she returned his affection with all of her heart. For the first time in her life, and possibly in mine, someone looked at her and made her feel like she was enough just the way she was. She used to fall asleep on his shoulder, claiming he smelt of cinnamon coffee and protection. He died 3 weeks ago. His sleep was calm, a tranquil ending exactly like his life. But Lily did not take it quietly. She completely shut down. She refused to get out of bed, talk, or eat. I thought sadness was supposed to come in waves, but she experienced it all at once like a blackout. No air, no light, and no beach. Then the invitation arrived. My parents contacted and said Lily could stay at the countryside house, which is where we are today. They suggested that the fresh air would assist. That family might be excellent for her. And God help me, I thought it may be true. I let her go for 2 weeks. She stayed here. I called. She answered, occasionally seemed exhausted, and always maintained she was all right. And I believed her until today, when the smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the quiet in her shoulders, and the note in my palm. 2 words: call 911. The knock arrived 15 minutes after I had made the call. I was back at the table by then, sitting on a thin cushion on a chair that may have been made of needles. My stomach was cramping so badly that I told myself I had appendicitis, or perhaps divine punishment for trusting individuals who wear cardigans in the heat. When the knock came, I froze. Everyone else did too. My father paused mid-sentence. My mother tilted her head wineglass halfway to her lips. My sister peered at the door as if she wasn't convinced it was genuine. Lily did not move. She did not even blink. I stood. I'll grab it, I responded as if we hadn't already heard the sound of authority on the porch. The man, the family friend whom I had not been properly introduced to, stood up as well, just a little a half rise, as if he wasn't sure whether he should participate or simply watch. I was already walking. I opened the door. 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female. No grins, radios on their shoulders, still hiss faintly. "Ma'am," replied the male officer, "we received a call from this residence." "I called," I said. The voice was too high. I choked. "It's my daughter." She handed me a message and told me to phone 911. "She is here. Something's wrong. She won't say it out loud, but something's not right." They nodded, no questioning, no raised eyebrows, just efficient practice motion. The female officer requested if she could speak with Lily alone. I moved aside and pointed. "She's at the table." The male cop requested to meet with me out front. I followed him, closing the door behind me as if it might contain the fear that was flooding my chest. Then I waited. They remained inside for 7 minutes. I know because I checked my phone exactly 12 times. I did not move. Couldn't. I just stood on the porch, watching the breeze's shadow move through the garden's withering roses. I thought about Uncle Arthur, the note how my mother smiled too quickly, and how the tea was always served in the same chipped mug, which Lily never drank all the way down. When the door reopened, I turned. Lily was standing close to a female officer. Her hands shook. Her face was as white as chalk, but she was speaking. Finally, she started talking. The male cop waved me over. I made it as far as the doorway before hearing it. Uncle Arthur left everything to me, Lily explained. Her voice was quiet, yet clear. They basically stated I needed to rest since I was grieving. Then they tried to get me to sign things. I blinked. "What kind of things?" the female cop inquired. "I'm not sure what they called it, papers, a release of responsibility, but it had my name on it." And the lawyer, that man, she indicated. He was supposed to be Uncle Arthur's lawyer, but he never contacted me, only them. He came here claiming it was only to simplify things. The cop nodded. Lily's voice continued to crack. I answered, no, I did not want to sign anything. I requested time. I requested a phone call, but they took it, explained it was for my mental health, and said I'd thank them later. Then the bomb dropped. I believe they were drugging me. The room shifted. Even the walls seemed to have taken a step back. The officers exchanged glances. The male cop then stepped out into the corridor. A few seconds later, I heard hushed voices and footsteps. They brought my parents back in first, then Astrid, and finally the lawyer. Now that everyone had returned to the room, no one was smiling. My mother stood. This is ridiculous. My father said that she has been grieving, holding his hands up like a preacher. You have to understand that we were attempting to help. My sister stated she's paranoid. She hasn't felt good since the funeral. The lawyer did not speak. The female officer stated that we would need to search the premises. My mother laughed. It sounded like glass was cracking. You cannot be serious. Based on what her imagination. We had a report, and now we have a statement. We have a plausible cause. The officers asked everyone to keep put. Backup was called. I watched it all from the doorway as if I weren't there watching a documentary about a family that had turned itself inside out. They began their search in the kitchen. It took 15 minutes. When they returned, the officer was carrying a plastic bag. Inside were loose tablets, small, round, and off-white, with no prescription container or label, stashed away in a kitchen drawer beneath a stack of coupon clippings. A male cop radioed for field testing. Then they went to the guest bedroom, which was the lawyer's room. That's where they discovered the unsigned documents. Lily's name was plainly stated on each page. Beneficiary release of claim estate forfeiture. Everything is typed, stapled clean and ready except for her signature. That portion was still blank. Then the basement. I had never been down there. My parents always explained that it was for storage. It turned out that storage meant a finished room with a bed, a side table, and a stack of folded blankets. It looked clean, almost homey, if you didn't look too closely. However, there was a bolt on the outside of the door and a thin window that did not open. And Lily's belongings were there. Her jacket, a pair of socks, a half-finished notepad, and her necklace, which Uncle Arthur had given her for her 16th birthday, neatly laid on the table as if she was about to settle in, with the exception of one item, her phone. That's what they discovered upstairs, locked in a cabinet in the laundry room with her wallet. My mother had told me that she had confided for her own peace of mind. I did not cry. Not then. I believe I was too stunned to cry. Following that, the police did not request further explanations. They did not need to. The lawyer was hauled out first, shackled behind his back, his face obscured. My parents followed. My sister comes last. They did not look at me once. I stayed with Lily. I didn't let her go for a single second. When the ambulance arrived to check her vitals, I slid in behind her and sat beside her the entire time. She looked little and exhausted, huddled up under that big hoodie. I pushed her hair back from her forehead and calmly inquired, "Why didn't you tell me?" She did not open her eyes. I did not think you would believe me. That was the part that hurt the most. Because somewhere along the way, my daughter had learned the same lesson I had. When individuals appear calm, courteous, and rational, the world moves too slowly to believe what transpires behind closed doors. However, this time someone did. If you've never had to disguise your worry behind casual talk while your daughter uncovers a criminal scheme at the dinner table, I wouldn't recommend it 10 times out of 10. But do you know what is worse when they are released? My parents, sister, and the lawyer are all free on bail pending trial. They labeled it a nonviolent offense. There was no confirmed harm, no prior convictions, and the subject cooperated during the arrest. Yes, my kid was drugged, isolated, and emotionally manipulated by her own family. But okay, let's treat them like if they merely forgot to return their library book. Lily did not sleep for 3 nights. Every noise caused her to jump. She refused to be alone in a room, even with the lights turned on. She kept wondering if we were truly safe now, if they'd show up again, as if everything was just a misunderstanding that could be fixed with a casserole. I didn't tell her how serious the risk was, but I began locking the doors, every window, and even the bathroom because I know my family does not want to lose. It happened on Tuesday. I'd gone into the city for a few hours to attend a client meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. Lily insisted that she was all right. She replied she'd stay and read and eat something. I almost did not go, but I did. Of course they showed up. When I arrived home, Lily was sitting on the living room floor, knees tucked to her chest phone in her lap, and face pale. They came, she explained. There is no preamble or greeting, simply that. I froze. Who she did not look up. All of them grandmother, grandfather, and Astrid. I set down my purse and sat near her. Are you okay? Have they touched you? Did they? They just talked. She opened her phone, went to voice memos, and pressed play. My mother's voice came first syrupy and lovely, as if she were complimenting a neighbor's curtains. Lily, darling, we simply want to clear the air. You've always been so sensitive and poetic. You view things differently. That is not a crime, sweetie. Then my father became colder. You do not realize how much strain we were under. Your granny hasn't slept for weeks. Then there's Astrid, crisp and flat. It was never meant to hurt you. It was about fairness. What would you do with that money? Then it was my mother again. It was always going to split this family up. Perhaps Arthur should have left it to someone more mature. The recording stopped there. My hand felt shaky. I reported the visit right away. The bail conditions were clear no contact, and they had arrived uninvited, manipulative, and cocky enough to speak freely while Lily was filming the entire event. Even the cop who collected my statement was angry. That night, I packed our bags. We moved out 2 days later. Not forever, only until court. I found a short-term apartment in a quiet section of town with solid walls, too many locks, and a nosy, elderly neighbor who stood outside her window like it was her religion. Perfect. Lily did not argue. She just remained nearby, barely speaking, and double-checking that the doors were secured. I filed for a no-contact order. It was granted in 24 hours. The charges were being finalized. The prosecution was preparing a case. Then came the interviews. The police separated them. My father came first, followed by my mother Astrid, and then the lawyer, and one by one they broke. A classic strategy. Tell each suspect that the others have already confessed. Give them a sense of panic. Observe how they fold. My sister, the one who usually brags about her loyalty, was the first to turn, claiming it was our mother's idea and that she simply went along with it. My mother claimed it was the lawyer's idea, that she never touched the tea, and that Lily imagined the drugging. My father stated he had no idea what was in the beverages and that the locked room was a safe environment. The lawyer, bless him, broke down entirely. Emails, payment records, copies of unsigned contracts, and even a folder containing printed drafts, including one labeled Worst Case Scenario Script. Almost admired the preparation. The charges arrived swiftly after that. My father was accused of false detention coercion and supplying controlled medications without consent. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison and will be eligible for parole after 4. My mother was found guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud and unlawful drugging. She earned 4 years with no parole until halfway through. My sister was charged with conspiracy. She received 18 months and served 9 in actual prison. The lawyer was disbarred and found guilty of fraud and aiding and abetting unlawful imprisonment. He received an 8-year sentence with no possibility of early release. It didn't feel like vengeance. It felt like oxygen. 3 months later, the estate was settled. We were summoned to a real lawyer's office, one who spoke like a person and did not smirk at children. He handed Lily a big bundle and softly stated, "This is yours now." The amount in her account exceeded my expectations as well as her own. It was plenty to cover education, therapy, rent, travel, a life and future. She cried when we came home, not because of the money, but because she felt safe for the first time in a long time and knew they could never take anything more from her again. Sometimes I wonder whether I was wrong not to notice sooner. Should I have pressed harder, asked more questions, and trusted my instincts rather than their courteous smiles and neatly folded napkins? Because in retrospect, the indicators were there. Lily's voice grew quieter, her eyes dimmer, and she hugged me for a little too long that night. I'm not sure. Maybe I let her down for a while, but when it came down to it, I listened and called, and maybe that's all that mattered. She's safe now, recovering and laughing again, the genuine kind, not the type you fake at dinner tables to keep the peace. I've learned that love doesn't equal silence, and family doesn't imply forgiving without change. So was I mistaken, or did I do the correct thing too late? Please let me know in the comments. I truly want to know what you think. And if you want to hear more stories like these, please subscribe.